Hey, RCA Church family, happy Friday. Well, you've made it again to the end of another week. Congratulations. And I've got your weekly word. That word today is fasting. Like, whoa, hold on a second, Pastor Kevin, I'm not so sure about that. Well, hey, fasting, let me just, myth bust fasting. It is a common spiritual discipline. It's biblical. It's in the Old Testament. It's in the New Testament. Jesus fasted. And here's why we need to fast as believers. Sometimes the enemy gets dug in our life. Sometimes he kind of puts in some trenches and some strongholds. And these are things that are maybe in your life. You may be a believer in Christ, but there are some things that you're not happy, you're not satisfied with in your life. There's some things that you know you need to get out of your life to really fully live for the Lord. And maybe you prayed about these things. Maybe you've tried to change some habits. Maybe you've tried to get out of that relationship and it's just so hard and nothing has changed. Listen, I want to encourage you to use this spiritual gift of fasting. Jesus said in Mark chapter 9, verse 29, that these come out only by prayer and fasting. In other words, there are some spiritual issues in our lives. Sometimes the enemy gets dug in to a degree that we need to call in the heavy weapons. We need to get on the line with heaven and say, hey, we need some support and some backup. Fasting is a route. It is a way to do just that. And so you're like, okay, Pastor Kevin, you've got my attention, but I don't know anything about fasting. Like, how do I even do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to give you 3 quick things that are going to help you to fast. Number 1, you need to determine the focus or the need. You know what? All throughout history, people have fasted for specific things, for people. Maybe it's a son or a daughter or a grandchild, specific causes for the church or for revival or for our nation or our government. Whatever moves your heart, whatever you're burdened for, whatever grieves you, whatever you're already praying about, maybe it's time to add fasting to that, to kind of power up and level up your spiritual authority. Fasting can and does do that. So what's your focus? What's your cause? What's your need? Once you determine that, then you need to determine the length of the fast. Really, what is God leading you to do? I encourage you, if you've never exercised this spiritual discipline before, what you ought to do is you ought to start small. Start with a meal, a couple meals. Start with one day. Because, fasting longer amounts of times can be very challenging and it can be detrimental to your health if you're not in shape to do that. Maybe the Lord would lead you to work up to a 3-day fast, a 5-day fast, a fast that's a week long. I would be careful going over that unless you are physically able to, unless the Lord specifically leads you to do that. But I do encourage you to incorporate the spiritual discipline. So you got to find your focus and your need. You need to determine the length of the fast. And then really when it comes down to fasting, this is the key thing. You got to shift your appetite. We all have an appetite, right? I love Krispy Kreme donuts. I'm sure you have the things that you love, pizza or Italian food or, Mexican, whatever it is. We all love to eat, but here's what I've found in my life. What we feed grows. And so if you just continue to feed into your flesh, then that's going to grow. You guys can see I've done that for a few years in my life. But also, if you feed your spirit's going to grow. And what fasting is this dedicated time to where you turn away from food and that time that you would spend purchasing food and preparing food and eating food. You leverage that time into your time with God, into prayer, into the reading of the Word, into sitting in the presence of God. And that discipline that you take on to shift your appetite from the physical to the spiritual. I just cannot tell you enough. What you feed will grow. And if you will feed into your spirit through this discipline of fasting, you will be amazed at the results that you see in your life. I want to challenge you with that. That's your word. It's a challenging word, fasting, but listen, you can do this. What are you grieved about? What's your focus? What are you already praying about? How long should you fast? And then go ahead, dig in, do that hard work of shifting your appetite from the physical to the spiritual for that length of time. I guarantee you'll come out of your fast spiritually charged up, spiritually engaged, and ready to do what God's called you to do. And I believe you'll see some strongholds begin to fall. That's your word. We're going to be continuing to teach on this on Sundays. Come out and join us for our By Prayer and Fasting series. I hope to see you Sunday at 10:30. God bless.